A former NASCAR announcer has unfortunately passed away. The Xfinity Series and the Truck Series had their tests at Rockingham, and we'll talk about Kyle Larson's comments about the playoffs. Welcome back to Break Hard. I'm Matt. We are so close to cars being on racetrack for an actual race. We did, of course, have cars on track for the Rockingham test the last 2 days. We'll talk about that in a minute. Before we get into the news, though, I want to talk about Shane Van Gisbergen's number 88 Chevy for the 2025 season, because it will have Red Bull branding on it, and it is not where you would expect it to be. The Red Bull branding will, instead of like being, in where like a contingency sponsor or an associate sponsor typically will be, is on the headlights, or technically around the headlights of his Chevy, not a Camaro. We're just calling it a Chevy because that's apparently what it is now. And it will go across the grill all the way over to the other side, to the other headlight. I think it's actually a pretty cool sponsor integration. I know some people are going to be like, this is hideous, this is ugly, why don't we get rid of this? Hey, I think it kind of looks pretty cool because it's something nobody else has tried yet. So hats off to them for trying something different for once. But let's get into the actual news, and we're going to start off with something sad here. That being Bill Weber, the former voice of NASCAR on NBC and TNT from the basically full time from 2005 until 2009. He didn't do the last two races in 2009 on TNT because of a confrontation he had at a hotel. Unfortunately, has passed away at the age of 67. Bill Weber passed away on December 14th, 2024. We did not learn about this until January 27th when the NMPA put out a statement about it on Twitter. And it's really unfortunate. 67 is far too young. And Bill Weber was a mainstay of the motorsports world basically since like 1994 when ESPN hired him to do motorsport coverage for them. He then became a voice on RPM Tonight and helped out there, did some pit reporting, went over to NBC in 2001 to continue doing pit reporting, some pre-race stuff, and then filled in on the lead play-by-play announcer role in 2004, and then took that over full-time in 2005 until 2009, like I said, when he was let go from the company after getting into a confrontation at a hotel. We're not going to let that kind of shroud sort of what the legacy of Bill Weber was, because he was certainly one of the more recognizable voices in NASCAR for nearly a decade at that point. And he's a guy that gave a lot to the sport and has been the voice on a lot of, pretty big calls throughout time. He, of course, only ever called one Daytona 500, that being 2006 when Jimmy Johnson won it. But he also was able to call Tony Stewart's Brickyard 400 win, which was a really great call there. If you want to go back and listen to it, you absolutely should.
Tony Stewart, a native Hoosier, his dream comes true. Tony Stewart wins.
After his days in NASCAR were done, he then became an illusionist, not to be confused with the illusionist that was on Tosh.0, but an illusionist at a hotel in St. Petersburg, Florida, not Russia, because I don't think they believe in illusionists over there. I'm not entirely sure. But he did that in the latter half of his career, and fans still took photos of him, with him, in the hotel. And he appeared to be in good spirits. He was always smiling anytime I saw those photos randomly pop up. I want to say this. I've seen a number of people in my TikTok comments, on Twitter, things like that, people being like, oh, it seems like something fishy is going on here. Why did they keep this a secret for a month, over a month at this point? What had happened here? Did something, bad happen? Listen, sometimes people just like to keep private things private, and a death in the family, especially when it's 67, which is really not that old, affects people different ways. And maybe they just weren't ready to make it public, quite yet. And I think that's completely fine. It's up to his family to decide when people find out about it. And I don't think it's anybody's business, one, to, know what his cause of death was, or two, to even need a reason for why the family waited this long. He's not necessarily a public figure anymore. There's no need for them to go out of their way to tell everybody. I think everybody should just, respect their privacy and their timeline and how they want to do things here. So unfortunately, Bill Weber passes away at the age of 67. All right, let's move on to the test at Rockingham Speedway this week for the Xfinity Series and the Truck Series. It was originally supposed to just be a one-day test on Tuesday, ended up being a two-day test after there was a delay on Tuesday morning, but we'll talk about the Xfinity portion of this first. The Xfinity Series hasn't been back to Rockingham since 2004 when the Cup Series left and the Xfinity Series followed. The Truck Series hasn't been back since 2013. They had a 2-year run there in 2012 and 2013. But let's talk about the Xfinity Series real quick, because I think a surprise name was at the top of the speed charts, that being Corey Day, the rookie, the Hendrick development driver, topped the charts and had the fastest lap time of the test, a 22.54 second lap. That is about 1/10 faster, a little bit over 1/10 faster than Jesse Love in second place there. Corey Day, though, absolutely flying around that racetrack. I texted one driver after the test on Tuesday, and I was like, how was the track? And he just said fast. Yeah, that's very indicative of everything that everybody has been saying, all the clips that we've seen. The track does look very fast, 162.43 mile per hour for Corey Day. That's hauling it around Rockingham. For Corey Day, though, obviously, he's a Hendrick development driver. He's going to be doing 30 races on pavement this year across different disciplines. We will see him in that 17 Hendrick car a decent amount in the Xfinity Series, but he got 442 laps in at Rockingham between the 2 days, between the Truck Series rather, and the Xfinity Series, which is absolutely massive for him as he continues to just build up his knowledge and his time and get reps in a stock car on pavement. Because like I said, he doesn't have that many starts on pavement, so any sort of practice time or testing time that he can get, he's absolutely going to take advantage of, and that's what they did here. Jesse Love was second fastest on the charts. Harrison Burton actually in third, Dean Thompson in fourth, Ryan Sieg fifth, Taylor Gray in sixth, Nick Sanchez seventh, Connor Zilich eighth, Jeb Burton ninth, and Carson Kvapil rounding out your top 10. Casey Kane making his return to NASCAR after getting out of the car following the Southern 500 back in 2018, was 12th fastest on the speed charts and seemed really, really comfortable. He hopped in the car and was just immediately up to speed and should absolutely have a good showing on April 19th or 20th, whatever the day ends up being. I can't remember the weekend dates for that when the series heads back for the actual race with the Xfinity Series at Rockingham. All in all, the Xfinity cars looked really, really good around there, and I'm not shocked by Corey Day being fast, just because I think the Xfinity car is going to fit his style of driving currently better than the truck is, and probably even definitely more than the Cup car as well. But to see him go out there and put in a lap that fast, that quickly, and, hats off to him. Seems like he's learning pretty quickly, like going to be the Jaden Daniels of the NASCAR Xfinity Series, Truck Series, and Trans Am ARCA series in 2025. All right, moving on to the Truck Series real quick. When I talked about how fast Corey Day went around the racetrack, and I was like, hey, he's hauling it around that track. Yeah, he was, until you look at the speed charts for the Truck Series, because Gio Ruggiero topped the charts in the Truck Series test there with a speed of 167 mile per hour, like 4.5 mile an hour faster than what the Xfinity cars are doing, a time of 21.888. Again, like over half a second quicker than what the Xfinity cars were doing around there. The downforce on the truck is definitely better than the downforce on the Xfinity cars, but Gio Ruggiero was the top of the chart there as he attempts his first full-time NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series season with Tricon Garage. Caden Honeycutt in the 45 for Nice was second, Ty Majeski third, Lane Riggs fourth, Jack Wood fifth, Dawson Sutton in sixth, Matt Mills seventh, Connor Mozak eighth, Corey Heim ninth, and Grant Enfinger rounding out your top 10. Daniel Hemrick making a return to the Truck Series was 11th fastest on the chart. Overall, I don't think there's any big surprises here. This is really just kind of a learning experience for a lot of these guys out here. Like I said, Corey Day ran the Xfinity and the Truck Series test here. He was 23rd fastest in the Truck Series. So I think there's just a lot of learning to happen here for everybody involved. Having Nice Motorsports have two cars in the top, 7 is actually really impressive for them. And I think that they are going to be a pretty stout group this year as we get rolling forward. But hey, I'm just happy to see cars back on track in the Xfinity Series and the Truck Series at Rockingham. And fans came out into turn 4 on Tuesday, and there's a decent amount of them there for a free test that started like 9 a.m. in the morning on a weekday, a work day, school day, potentially for some of them. Hey, hats off to everybody that went out there. This should be a very cool event. I hope it's a sellout when the series go back there in April. But overall, just nice to see this racetrack back hosting races once again. Kyle Larson was asked by Bob Hawkers over at Fox Sports during NASCAR production media days if he would rather have 6 wins a year and not win a championship or win a championship. And Larson answered it in a way that I'll build upon here in a second. But essentially how he answered the question was if he didn't already have a championship, he would pick the championship. Since he has one, he said 6 wins a year. But he went on to say that he thinks he could win 20 races a year and still lose the championship. That wouldn't surprise him. And then he went on to say that if you're going to make it to the championship race and a Penske car's there, you can pretty much just go ahead and chalk it up to Penske winning another championship because they're so strong at Phoenix. And that right there is, I think, the problem with this format currently. Don't get me wrong. The the playoff format has its flaws. I think NASCAR has seen that in a sense as well, and I think they're going to look at potentially tweaking it. But I think that there's a better version of the playoffs. The playoffs have certainly created storylines. Don't get me wrong. They have absolutely created them. Tyler Reddick's win at Homestead last year. You have Ryan Blaney's walk-off win at Martinsville. They create storylines. They create moments. Absolutely 100% not going to disagree with that. I think, unfortunately, the one race winner take all has really kind of clouded the, prestige around the championship slightly. And here's the thing, having it be at a track like Phoenix, which is very technical, it relies a ton on mechanical grip, and some teams hit it, some teams don't, but there's not much room for margin of error, and there's not a ton that the driver can do in the seat to really make up for it, because essentially it's a single lane racetrack all the way around. And like we've seen with the Penske cars the last 3 years in the Gen 7 era, they are basically untouchable there. So having it be at a track like that is just not conducive to having a good championship race. At Phoenix, or at Homestead rather, we've seen good championship races there, and we haven't seen it be dominated by one organization the same way it has been at Penske. And this is no slight to Penske. They continue to do their homework. They continue to show up with really fast race cars there, especially in the fall. But it's not good for the overall health of the sport, and it's not good for parity. Now, having it at a track like Homestead, you have multiple different lanes there. You have more room for the driver to be able to make up speed in that when the car potentially doesn't have, all the speed that it couldn't or needs there in the moment. And that's why I think that a 3-race championship round is definitely the way for NASCAR to go into the future, because it allows for you to have 3 different types of racetracks where it potentially 3 different organizations or 4 different organizations could all have their strengths and weaknesses. I think that's more conducive to having a good championship battle than to have a 1-race winner take all. Yeah, you have the possibility of a guy going into the final race of the year and having enough of a healthy points lead that it's really not that dramatic, which is fine, because I think that makes you really appreciate the years where you go into that final race and you have one of those really dramatic championship battles. Think about 2021 Formula One. Yeah, most Formula One seasons suck. Like, they're usually decided way beforehand. But when you get one of those championship battles that goes down to the last race of the year, barring the FIA fixing their own rules, it is very, very exciting. And I think that's what we absolutely need in NASCAR. Something where you can appreciate it and where it gives drivers and teams the possibility of, rebounding from, one bad race, or maybe going to a track that they're not, explicitly, great at, and then being able to go to a track where they potentially are better at and kind of level it out here and then have that 3rd race and see how all of it plays out. But I don't disagree with what Kyle Larson said. He's right. You can win 20 races a year and not win the championship. That could absolutely happen. Is it going to? No. And if somebody does win 20 races a year in the modern era, that would be absolutely unheard of, unless you're playing NASCAR Heat 5, where I'm pretty sure at one point I won like 30 of the 36 races. Richmond always gets me. Just can never figure out a setup for Richmond in that game. But Larson, I don't think his comments are wrong. I just think that he's exploiting an issue that I think we all see with the playoff format. And hopefully we get some sort of change out of that, because I think it would be beneficial for the sport going forward. So let me know in the comments what you think about the SVG, Red Bull design. Bill Weber, unfortunately passing away at the age of 67. The Xfinity and Truck Series test at Rockingham, along with the Kyle Larson comments. Like and subscribe to the channel. Follow me on TikTok at BreakHard, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at BreakHardBlog.